2, 1.
Great. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's installment of the Hockey Tank Business Plan Competition Workshop Series. As always, we have our sort of resident guru, not sort of, definitely our resident startup guru, Mr. Gary Masner, joining us. And this evening we'll be talking about sort of gauging that market, right? Who are your customers? Have you talked to your customers yet? How do you find out exactly if your value proposition is the right value proposition for the customers you're looking for? So, without further ado, Mr. Masner.
Thank you very much. So I'll start out, I never like to start out a presentation with an apology, but I'm going to. We're going to try to cover in the next hour and 50 minutes or something what literally should take about a full semester of 2 different courses to really cover adequately. So we're going to go through it fast, skip through some things pretty quickly, but you're going to see the key things, and hopefully you're going to get enough here to be able to really kind of flesh out some of the really critical components of your business model and your business ideas here. So market analysis, call it. So it's really, again, you remember the whole right side of the business model canvas dealt with customers and how you're going to reach them, the channels and marketing programs and the relationships, and then getting into the revenue side. So we're going to really try to get through that whole process tonight, this evening, whatever it is. So again, stop me when we're talking about it. You've got all of this. Oops. Is it set up right? All right. I'll just do it this way, right?
There we go.
Good, okay. So look, so this is a combination of things. We're going to start and we're going to talk more about what I'd call the kind of market research end, if you will, of analyzing your markets. And it's really gathering as much data as you can and the analytics of it, and really trying to figure out what's going on in this market. You're trying to enter yourself with whatever your product or service is. And it's really, you'll see we're gonna approach it from all different angles in this thing, because you have to in the marketplace. But you're really gonna, in the end, you're really gonna come out with what are my very targeted, finely targeted customer segments that I'm gonna go after. What's the product that they really need that's gonna solve their pain point or their gain point? And what are the features of it I've got to have? How am I going to price it so that they're willing to take the chance at it? And then what kind of marketing programs am I going to put together to really try to reach them? As effectively, cost effectively on the one hand, because cost is critical, but really effectively get them to start the journey of buying my product. And we'll talk about that. And then in the end, then what you come up with, after you've done all this work, what are some reasonably achievable sales targets that I can really try to plan for? And again, we talked about that a little bit in the legal session and in all the sessions, and I'm just going to keep hammering away at this, that you've got to try to be reasonable in your assumptions of what you can sell, how long it's going to take, and how much you can do. And we'll talk specifically at the end here about, again, a board meeting I sat in on where still the same problem, the mistakes you can make about relying on too aggressive or optimistic a set of sales projections. So that's what we'll go through. And again, obviously, questions, things, please do come up. So this is, again, like your whole business model, your whole planning. It's really trying to ask yourself some questions. What do I know? What don't I know? Where can I fill in the holes? And that's what you've got. You've got a whole set of holes here, a whole set of hypotheses and things that you're assuming about your product and what it is. So addressable market, that's almost a term that's faded away, but I sort of keep it up here because there's a lot of ways to look at this market, but what am I really addressing with my product, my solution, my value proposition that I'm going after and stuff. We're going to talk a lot about competitors because you just can't be, somebody else out there. You've got to have a very unique value proposition, and more than that, It's got to be unique relative. It's got to be unique relative to what your customers are looking for, but unique relative to what your competitors are doing. You've got to differentiate yourself from competitors to have a chance. When you start defining it, you really want to understand, the characteristics of the early adopters, and where is the pain the greatest, and their ability to solve that the easiest, simplest, and stuff. That's the very targeted market segments that you start out going after. And then again, as we said before, what are the key features of my product? Your product, well, very unlikely that the product outside, when you first walk outside and try to sell your product, it's not going to have all the features and things you would like to have eventually. But you just can't afford to wait that long. You've got to get out with a minimally viable product, as it's called, one where there's a really good product market fit. That's what you've really got to really focus on and stuff. And how should it be priced? We'll talk a little bit about some pricing. That's a whole art, and there's whole courses about pricing and stuff. It's a really, and you'll see a lot of things where it changes, and you're just going to have to figure out what works and what doesn't work. We'll talk about some of those pieces. The buying process and touch points, this terminology in this in marketing end of the world changes almost daily, in my opinion. And now it's called customer journey, and I use that. I think I'll update the slide for next year's thing. But it's the whole buying process and touch points is called the customer journey, and we'll talk about that a little bit. You really need to understand that as best you can, because otherwise you're spinning your wheels, and more importantly, throwing your dollars at pieces of the journey that are at the wrong point. So, and then how do I come up with a marketing program that I can afford? Because you just, Casper, I'll use the example right now. Casper Mattress, who wants to guess at about how much they spend a year on advertising? Good guess. Over $100 million. That's why they're not making money, and you look at all these companies that are, it's just incredible, and what they're spending. And I thought that had sort of gone away with the .com bust, which, most of you weren't around then, but that's what people were doing in those days. They were just spending money on advertising, and it didn't matter whether they were going after the right people or getting the right things or selling enough to justify even a piece of that. And we're seeing that crop back up again over and over again. So, and then talked a little bit about it. We're going to talk some more. You really have to try to understand, the cost of acquiring a customer. We'll talk about what that means, but there's some models that you can just tell from the beginning that it was just going to cost too much to acquire a customer. And that you can't, when it costs a lot and you're not getting it back very quickly, that's the cost of acquiring versus sort of lifetime value. If you're not getting it back very quickly, you can't scale this business unless you find a way like Casper does to spend $100 million, to acquire people that want a rolled up piece of foam and deliver it in a box in their house, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, I'm obviously not a Casper customer, so I'm getting on them a little bit. Okay, so those are the pieces we're going to try to cover today. So why should you bother? Well, this is the key thing that investors, if you need to bring in investors, that's the key thing they look at. You've got to have enough behind your revenue projections that they're already going to mistrust. You've got to have enough data behind it and things behind it, and the whole, not only the data about how big the addressable market is, but how I'm going to get to it, how I'm going to turn them into customers and get them to pay me money that shows up in my revenue account every month and stuff. So they're going to care, but more importantly, you should care.
And real quick, Gary, and we have to remember, Mr. Masner says investors, right? And really, you can plug in investors for judges. Yep. Because I guarantee you, when you guys are out there and you're presenting to the judges are reading your plans, right? They have the same sort of experience as Mr. Masner, right? They recognize that a lot of these business plans, they're inflated, the assumptions are flawed, and so that's really what we want to work on. We want to work it on the sort of the grounding and the fundamentals of your assumptions, because that's what's going to sell the judges, that's what's going to sell your investors, and really, hopefully, that's what's going to lead to a successful business. And so I just wanted you guys to keep that in mind. When Mr. Nazar uses investors, he's also using it as a synonym for judges.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I don't focus in enough on that specific term, judges. But
Sure.
Exactly what Professor Valdez said. These judges are going to approach this with an investor perspective,
Exactly.
right? That's how they think. They're not thinking how cute your slides are or how well or poorly dressed you are when you come to it, although they might think about that. I don't know. But they're thinking about this: is this a business I would invest in?
Exactly.
Are they answering the questions? Is there the kind of return? That's the hat they wear
Yep.
there. That's their perspective. And so when I use the term exactly, it's totally, you can put in judges or investors, because they're exactly the same perspective. Okay? Okay. So, marketing, more than almost anything, is the perspective that you can look at markets from a whole set of perspectives. We're going to start this top-down, 30,000 feet, 50,000 feet, 50 miles up, whatever you want to say. We're going to look at the big picture first, and then drill down very, very much into, trying to define a specific person. Right now we're looking at the whole world of it and what's the addressable market and stuff. So starting and just trying to say, what's the overall size of this market that I'm trying to address? What's the insulin market? What's the whatever market it is, that you're looking at, and try to define that. And then, but not just size. What's going on out there in that market? How fast is it growing? What are the factors that are impacting it? Are there new regulations, new competitors? Is everybody getting their supply chain changed over to some other place so they can bring it in at lower levels? Are they taking advantage of new technologies and marrying things up? What's going on in that market that's really impacting? You have to have as good an understanding of that as you possibly can. So it's those trends within the market and factors that are affecting it. And then you really do need to understand who the competitors are. What their shares of that market are, who the big ones are, and how you're going to try to outmaneuver them with your product and your business model and your marketing strategy.
Gary, can you share maybe a little more specific on, maybe like just kind of like an example of how that might look? So if a student, one of my biggest fears, and I've heard this from students saying, everyone wants this.
Yeah.
Right? Number one, that's going to be a fatal flaw, right?
Yeah.
Because the judges, investors, et cetera, will say, well, actually, that's not true, right? Or maybe they can't afford it, or there's all these other sort of inhibitors that might exist that actually they're not really sort of part of your customer or your target market. So let's start with that. But second of all is, can you kind of talk us through like sort of, the student?
Boy, I've never seen anybody. I've never seen a state level contract signed so quickly. They just loved it and stuff. So that's just you've got to. Your pricing is really dependent on your product and your customers, and then very specific situations, right? So there's no magic formula to it. The freemium thing, free trials, I'm great with. As long as they're limited periods of time, try it. Free for 2 weeks, a month, whatever. If you like it, great. But this whole freemium thing where, you get this, and as long as you stay there, we're never going to charge you. When you want a couple of extra features, we're going to charge you. I just think that's a place where everybody that tries that has overestimated the conversion they're going to get from the freemium to the premium, right? It just isn't even close. And they get in this hole where they've gotten all these customers that they probably could have gotten this, if they hadn't offered that freemium, they probably could have gotten X% of them up front, but they lost that, and everybody's happy enough with what they've got, and they never get there, and pretty soon they're not around anymore. So I don't like the freemium model. That's different than free trial for a certain amount of time, right? And I'm seeing a real trend towards that kind of free trial versus a freemium forever product.
Gary, how do you see that playing out in the app industry? Do you see that the app industry is going just where you get the free sort of kind of like couple-week trial, or do you think the app industry still at that freemium? and really haven't learned?
Mostly in the app, I still see the freemium. I see some of them trying it.
Sure.
Right, I've gotten, I don't know, I've tried a few of them myself
Okay.
and stuff, and, and it's, I still think that's better, because otherwise I'm gonna leave those, that freemium, and I'll use it once in a while
Okay.
and stuff, but I probably never, I think one or two of them I've upgraded, but not very many of them and stuff. And I don't know how you are, maybe you're different. Okay, you just have to decide that, but, if there's enough, if you can offer it, and there's enough there, and there really is, once they have just gotten used to it a little bit, and then they say, boy, if I just pay $9 a year or a month or whatever it is, I can get these added features, that's really gonna be great, but, I really think it's better to test that out first a little bit before you just go wholesale the freemium model, because I think you're just gotten an awful lot of freeloading customers, so. Okay. And again, pricing, you're gonna get some experience with it, you're gonna see whether people, take it or not, you're gonna see what features they might buy. It's always good to have extra features that they, and you see this a lot, right? I mean, Intuit is the TurboTax is the most, they've almost gone insane with the levels of it, but, and you buy it, the basic product, it does things, but if you want a little help at this level, because you've got a more complicated set of situations, you're self-employed, or you've got rental properties, or you've got this or that, or stock holdings. It's amazing that's, that a lot of people don't, and that's smart, right? They got the basic lowest cost product, and then if you've got these other things, it probably means you've got more disposable income, you can afford to, your time is worth more, so if they can help you get through it faster and get that thing behind you and do it accurately so you're not audited and all these things, so I think they've got a great pricing model like that.
So have you ever seen like a company that started with the premium and then later on they kind of switched away from premium and went to like an actual set price for their services, and have you seen negative effects?
Big negative effects, I think.
Cool.
And I'm trying to think. I think there have been a few companies that have tried that. I just can't remember now who they are. I'll try to remember by the next one, and we'll kind of cover that maybe in the early.
Start off free, and then they try to go.
Well, and they just saw that the freemium wasn't working, so they kind of do away with that product, and then come out with. First they come out with the product that you do have to pay for. It's got more features, but they essentially do away with the freemium. And there have been a couple. I just can't remember at this moment who they were. And you aggravate all those people that you had told they could have it for free, and now they don't anymore, and so. And there are bunches of them. You can go to a Grubhub and say, okay, I get my first 10 deliveries for free and stuff. I don't think it takes 10 to know whether or not it's worth it. I think that's a mistake, because a lot of people are going to use it 10 times and then not use it again, right? So that's a tough one. You're better off, again, I'll go the opposite direction. So one of our companies that went through Scape, they have Epic Magazine, and they wanted to do a licensing around the country to different people. It's a great magazine. They care about, its mindfulness and sustainability in the community and environment and all this. The kind of people that are, that probably want to do theirs, they're not very good at selling ads, which is still how, each of their publishers has to do it, and doing some of the other things. They just care about wanting to do something good in their community. And they're also probably not the kind that have a lot of money up front. So they were trying to charge a big upfront licensing fee. And we said, gee, maybe when you've got 10 or 15 publishers you can point to, but you don't have any yet, you got to get some. So we said, don't charge up front, just charge them over time as they, a little higher royalties and on advertising and things. So it just, again, there's no one answer to any that fits everybody. You just got to figure out, what it is about your product and your customers, and what's going to get them to try you and pay you something for it, and stay with you, right? Because they're really happy with it and they're getting good value from it. Okay. And then again, what your you asked this before, how do you figure this out? Well, you know, again, the more you go out and just talk to people, would you be willing to, do you like this product? Here's what it's going to do, yes. Would you be willing to pay this much? See how many people say yes. Try it with another group and say, would you be willing to pay either higher or lower? Don't, if too many people say yes the first time of this group that you test, go out with a higher price next time, right? And see what happens. Don't stick with that thing. Oh, it's great. Well, go out and see if you can get a little more, because I promise you, if you can get a little more with almost the same number of customers, then you're going to be better off. You're going to be able to be more successful and take that money you are getting, put it back into future ideas, future plans, future improvements, better marketing for more customers, all those things. So yeah, it's not easy. Okay, it's not like you can. But I've seen some people that go to the rec center or go wherever you think your potential customers might be and just ask some questions and stuff.
The train station's a great place
train
to
station
do
would be.
data collecting. It really is.
Yeah.
You get a great cross-section of locals, tourists, especially if you're looking for something maybe that's going to be a little bit bigger than just Durango. I know a lot of students and even just entrepreneurs, that's where they've gone with their clipboards and just ask questions.
Go to the visitor center, to the Fort Lewis desk and tell them, hey, I'm doing this Hawk Tank business plan competition. Could I ask you a couple questions?
Of course.
Everybody say yes. If they say no, then fine. But, or go talk to, and just, it's hard sometimes to walk in the door, right? But if you're selling to, I don't know, galleries, or you're selling, go to a bike shop and show them drawings of your picture and ask them, I work at one. Yeah, I know you do. That's right. Okay, so those kinds of things, that you just got to find whatever sources that you can get that'll give you some, but again, it's not until you're out there really, really selling to real customers that you're really going to understand it better and get your assumptions either, verified or modified a little bit or totally destroyed and stuff.
Gary, can you share with us just some examples of what you mean by a go, no-go hurdle metric?
A go, no-go metric?
Yeah, can you share with the students?
Yeah, again, I think we're talking about in terms of the buying process, or
just like the whole idea of testing your assumptions.
Yeah. So again, I think if you you're going to have this idea of the price you need to charge to cover all your expenses and things, right? And if you go out to 20 people and only 2 of them say that, yeah, I'd pay that much for that product, that's that's a no-go, right? You should. So. The reason it's up here, and I hadn't gotten down to looking at that again. So you should have, here's the real problem. You go out, you have this idea, I'm going to go out and test my pricing, okay, and see if people find it acceptable. But if even one person comes back and says, I use 2 out of 20 or whatever, but if even 1 or 2 people come back and say that's good, you may feel, wow, that's great, I'm good with that. You should have kind of these ideas in your mind that I've got to get at least this many people that I first talked to say this is good, or if I don't get to that level, then I've got a problem that I've got to relook at, whether it's pricing or product features or something about it. I've just got to come back and say I've got to pivot because I can't go on the basis of this level of affirmation that I'm on the right track. It just isn't high enough for me to keep going in this direction without changing tracks or getting a new locomotive or something.
Sure.
Right. So good point.
Thank you.
Okay. And again, part of all that whole thing that we've said, at the beginning, and we'll keep saying it, I think, almost every session. Sometimes we just get so in love with our solution, whatever it is, that we absolutely believe everybody's going to buy it, and we're not. Even though we're not getting really great affirmation from potential customers, we think it's kind of good enough, and we're just, we're so wanting to get our product out there just the way we've designed it that we're just going to keep doing it, and you can't do that. Okay, you've got to really measure the feedback you're getting and say, look, we've got to do some changes. We've got to change something about what we're doing or who we're going after, and so that's the pivot. So again, you're trying to solve a problem. Think about solving the problem no matter what it takes to do that, not trying to sell your solution to to solving the problem necessary. So if you come at it from that perspective, you're willing to make those adjustments that are necessary to be successful. That's the key. Okay? Yeah. Okay, and then again, what I really want you to start doing right now is taking all this stuff together, you know, the size of my market and you know, how long I think it's going to take to get there, because there's a timing issue, right? I mean, you're starting in business and you're going to be starting to incur expenses and all those things, and it isn't until sufficient, you know, revenue comes in down the road sometime to cover your basic expenses to break you even and get you, get you positive cash flow, that you're going to have, you know, a sign of success. So you've got that interim period, and we all like to think it's going to be really short and, you know, it's not going to cost us much, but I just guarantee it's going to. So put together realistic assumptions, and again, start out not with dollars, start out with units you're going to sell of whatever it is, and then you can put pricing, different pricing on it as you come up with it. But if you start with pricing, you just get lost in the dollars. Start with units. It's just an easier way to think about whether it's, you know, app downloads or software services or products or recreational usage or whatever it is. So, okay. So start that process as soon as you can. I mean, first you got to do all the other work, so I don't think you're going to have it by tomorrow morning when you wake up. But you know, that's the first step. It's the first thing that loads into the financial projections models. Here's how many units I'm going to sell over these periods, you know, for each quarterly for the first 4 quarters and then another 4 years. So that's what you start, and then you put a pricing on it, and then start filling in your cost estimates and all that stuff. So.
And for those that want that financial model early, so let's say you're like, oh, I'd like to really see Mr. Mazner's model before we actually have that session, shoot me an email at mevaldez@fortlewis.edu, and I'll forward you the model, and so you can take a look at it before you come to the workshop. And I think that might be really valuable, because I think it's a nice bridge to this discussion to what we're going to be doing the next workshop. And don't stress out if you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many tabs. Don't freak out. Mr. Mazner and Beta Alpha Psi will take you through it, but it's a great resource.
Yeah, pretty straightforward once
It's nice. It's
once you
really
see how
cool.
it's used.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. So work on the market stuff first, though. Don't start out and get that and think it's going to give you the answers to your market stuff. Get working on that first.
Great. Any
Okay.
questions for Mr. Mazner? No more?
Okay. Thanks for coming.
I think a lot of times students, when they hear this and they see this, I don't think they really understand kind of how that would look in real life, right? So let's say, for example, I mean, even like if Taylor, you don't mind, let's say, you know, Taylor's bike transport box,
Right.
right? You know, what might be sort of ways that Taylor can kind of do that research to kind of see, okay, from the top down, what that competitive market looks like.
Right,
Like,
okay.
what would be some like examples, just some hints? 'Cause I think if we get to I think we need to get a little bit more in the weeds. I think that might help some of the students.
Okay. Well, okay, let's use that one. What we're talking, I mean, you can say, okay, here's how many bicyclists there are in the country, right? And how many average bikes they have, and what size they are, and all that. You can find those statistics, okay? And it's just incredible if you really just do a little bit of research. There are great reports written. You've got a list of some of the places here that you can get, and some of the things you can get in the library. But you can also, you just Google some stuff, and it's just amazing what you can find.
So this, like breaking it in, I would go biking per capita, what, as an industry, how much did people spend on bicycles in the last year?
Well, and I almost want to go to another specific, very specific example, which I will after we finish with yours, okay?
Sure.
But how much they spent is probably not as important as how many there are, okay? Broadly, how many there are, okay? But then you say, okay, but who needs my product, okay? So tell me some of the characteristics of any bicyclist who really needs your product. What would define, why would I need it? What defines it?
Well, I mean, it's primarily to protect your investment, you know, presuming
What, in
that
my house when I'm sitting there?
your investment into cycling.
Okay, but be really specific for a minute. I mean, when am I going to use the product that you're creating?
Transporting your bicycle
To where? If I'm just going down to Home Depot so I can ride out La Posta and up the hill, am I going to take it?
Most likely not. I
No,
mean,
most likely not. When am I going to use it?
for longer distance travel.
Okay,
The key,
now, see,
absolutely.
now we're starting to get there, okay. And the kind of things where I'm going to a race, I'm going to another tour ride, I'm just going on a vacation to a
Yes.
new place in the mountains where I want to go?
Yeah.
Which one?
It
Well,
could
okay,
cover all of those, honestly.
okay, now you start getting in, okay, how many bike riders are there? How many different, very interesting kinds of trips are there where people might take it to go and ride either, you know, most of the bike vacations you go on, right? If I go, you go with them and they supply the bike for you typically, right? So you're talking about somebody who's probably driving and or flying, more driving, right? I guess
Just driving, yeah.
Okay, just driving, okay. Thought you could use it both ways, but okay.
I had explained the both ways, but after
Okay,
doing a
now you're
more
focused on
research.
driving, okay. So now you think, are they probably mountain bikers or road bikers?
I would provide two models.
Okay,
one
but
for
what are
each.
they more likely to be? You don't,
Mountain bikers.
mountain bikers, okay, see, that's what you're starting to do. You can't come up with 4 different products for all kinds of people.
Yeah.
You know, you want to be focused, so, yeah, what kinds of people take their cars, typically, right? And drive to different places to do mountain bike trips. That's what you got to focus on. How many of those are there? What kind of bikes are they doing? They're high-end, you can really get some of those specific numbers of people that have high-end mountain bikes, and where are they, and all those things. So that's what you really got to focus down on, okay? And really try, and then really define them, and then figure out how am I going to reach them, okay, what, and so. I'll give you one other example. It's an unfortunately bad example, okay, but that's how it happens. So we just went through, I was explaining to Professor Valdez and a couple others, so they're here early. We've just been through 2 days of interviewing skate applicants. More than I can ever remember before, there were some great people with absolutely terrible ideas or not much to back them. And there was one woman who was a combination of a geologist and a GIS map maker. And I collect old maps. I mean, by the way, it's one of the best investments I think in the world. You can buy a map from 1590 from Bertelius or the great Mercato, the great map makers, for $500 or $600. They ain't making any more of those. And but I don't buy them from investment. I buy them because I love old maps. And I also kind of like geology, and I always wonder, you know, even when I'm driving up the Dardanelles, you know, well, what is that? When were these things formed, and what does it mean? And all this. I'm into that. Okay, and she makes the most beautiful fold-out maps that are about this big. That's one of the problems I think with them and stuff, for specific trails in national parks. Okay, and explaining the geology, putting in a little bit of the kind of the natural history of them, different points, you know, on the trails, and you look at the number on your thing. Just an incredibly, I think they're just beautiful and very effective. So how is she going to decide what her market size is? She tried to get specific. She went to Maria's and Pine Mountain and said, what percentage of your sales are maps? And then she took those 2 stores and looked at all the bookstores in the country sales and all the sporting goods stores and put, you know, the 1 and 1.5% or 0.8 and 1% of all those sales, and then said she thought she could capture X of it, and came up with a number of 12,500 maps in 5 years, sold at $12 a piece, so, you know, roughly $150,000 of gross revenue in 5 years. I want to tell her to find another living, right, that's not there. But is that a good way to do it? How else could you maybe come up with an estimate?
I I was just gonna say that she should have done an app, maybe.
Exactly what she should do, and she got a lot of that input from even old timers like me and stuff. But this is national parks. You think there are statistics of how many visitors there are in each national park in this country? Yeah, right? Wouldn't that have been a better? I still don't know why she didn't start there. So her first one's at Grand Canyon, and I want to say, I don't remember exactly, but something like 350,000 visitors to the Grand Canyon National Park each year. Well, you know, that to me gives you a little more. Well, now if she said, I think I can get 5% of them every year to buy it, okay, I could live with that projection, especially, you know, if she gets kind of specific about it and stuff, and then take that to the other parks, and, you know, I mean, that's how you do those. You just try to come up with whatever way you can come up with numbers. Sometimes it's hard, like if you're trying to figure out how many mountain bikers take, you know, driving vacations every year and stuff, but, you know, you start getting into those, and I think you can get close.
Gary, how do investors, how do you think the judges feel if, let's say, for this example with the maps,
Yep.
right? How do you feel if, you know, the individual comes up with 4 different methods, and so they try to almost like triangulate and say, okay.
That's great, if you
Okay.
can do that, even better. Different ways to try that, sure. Yeah, yeah. And other people, there was one other person that, you know, had an idea. It's not a bad idea, they've shown some traction, but, you know, said he could do 200 million within a few years. No way. You know, compared it to, you know, made a totally inappropriate comparison of that stuff, and nothing to back it with any real numbers, just threw it out and stuff. You know, you just scratch that off. I mean, I'll tell you one of my rudest, I have a lot of rude comments, so it's hard to pick the rudest of all, but back in my venture capital days, this team came in, a guy, and he said, the market is this big and all I need is 1% of it to be successful. And I said, well, great, and venture capitalists spend $3 billion a year on new investments, and all you need is 1%, so good luck. Go off and find somebody. I mean, you can't just say things like that, okay? You can't just say it's a huge market, all I need is 1% to be successful. You've got to get more specific about why you're going to be able to get out and reach X number of customers within that segment. So that's where we'll kind of move this to next. The bottoms up side. So you've taken this big perspective, you know, there are 300,000 visitors to Grand Canyon National Park. Now how can I try to get some other perspectives about some percentage of those visitors that might really be interested in the geological things, might be going on the relatively longer hikes and those kinds of things. How can I reach them? What are their characteristics? Where are they? Where are they coming from? Now, not in this one specifically, but you really want to understand the geography. I'm guessing that with your product, you're probably going to get people that are already, you know, in certain areas to start with, and that are going on weekend or week-long driving trips, right? Because they're not going, you know, they're not going over to Europe with, you know, Vermont cyclists or whoever the, you know, people are doing those things. So, you know, you really want to find them. You really want to understand the demographics. You want to be able to describe them, what motivates them, how they behave, what they do, how they make decisions, what their budgets are. Can they afford a Cadillac box versus just putting, you know, some plastic sheeting around it or something like that, taping it off and hoping that helps and stuff. So you really need to understand, have they got the budget, and have they got the behavior, the motivations, the pain points that I'm trying to solve, and have they got the ability to buy it and stuff. And then the persona, again, you know, we always used persona for a long time, and for those, I think we talked about it last time, but, you know, we really put a picture of somebody, a literal picture, not just a drawing, but, you know, cut a picture out of a magazine. This is what a person looks like who's going to buy my product. Then write things about it. You know, just start talking about it. Try to describe them and stuff. Because the more you can do that, and the more you can tie into why they're probably, you know, the best possible fit for your product, the more you'll understand them and what drives them and how you can go out and reach them. And that's the key thing that you're trying to end up with. So persona is a number, we've been using that name for 15 years or more, you know, avatars are now, you know, and they're not as real to me. Well, a great movie, but they're not as real. But you know, if you like Avatar better than Persona, that's fine. Doesn't matter what you call it, just do it. So that's what you're trying to get to. I'm going to talk about a little bit about competitors, and you really want to you don't want to say, yeah, here's a competitor. You really want to try to understand, you know, you want to understand their business model canvas. Okay, you want to understand how they're doing things and how they approach customers and why. And especially in entrenched competitors, you'll find that they keep adding things and doing things like from everybody, you know, one feature that one set of customers will want, they add that, now everybody's got to take it and buy it and pay for it and or use it and all of that. And how they do things tends to be, you know, similar, and they copy other competitors, and pretty soon you'll find that they're kind of bloated a little bit in their approach, both to the product and how they do things. Now, the really smart ones are getting different. The really smart ones are saying, hey, we've got to understand our customers and go after them in very specific ways. But hopefully, you'll find competitors that haven't gotten to that point yet, and you can go out and reach them. Okay? And you're really trying to say, yeah, this is what they're trying to do, and some customer segments they aren't serving very well, very efficiently with the right product, the right price, the right service and relationship. Those are the customers we're going to go after.
Gary, what do you think when students say they have no competitors?
Well, then they ought to find something new to do, because that, you know, even if it's a totally new product, a new kind, the competitor is inertia or something else or some other way that they're trying to solve the problem or trying to do something. So they're going to have and whether it's time or money or product or, you know, some solution, there's always a competitor out there. Okay, always.
As you think about this all, is that, you know, I've had students say, oh, there are no competitors, right? Let's say they were working something like that was really unique, let's say the entertainment field, right? And they wanted to do it here in Durango, the Four Corners area. There's nothing like it, Dr. Valdez. Then the question is, okay, well, who's like, and then they start doing the market analysis, right? And especially when they start going from the bottom up, and they start understanding that, hey, well, actually, it's these individuals that have a certain amount of disposable income are actually our target market, right? Because there are individuals, maybe they can't afford it, maybe they're not interested in it, and so now we start creating exactly kind of what that target market is. And if we're talking about disposable income, it can go to anyone, right? And anyone that's going to, they are your competitors for those customers, right? And I think that's something that a lot of times entrepreneurs and especially students that are working on this don't recognize, is that, yeah, they may not be selling the same thing, they may not be solving the same maybe specific need, but guess what, they're a competitor just because you're fighting for that same piece of disposable income pie.
And disposable income for sure, but also their time and interest and all of those things. So, you know, you might have a whole new idea of an entertainment thing, but people are already spending the amount of time and money that they have on entertainment. They're doing whatever it is they're doing, and you just got to convince them that they're going to get a lot more fun for the same money or less out of your offering than they are of what they're currently doing. Okay, those are the kinds of things you have to think through. It is easy when you come up with a whole new idea, like, you know, in some product or thing, but believe me, they always have. There's always if it's not a competitor in terms of a real company trying to do something, it's a competitor in terms of the way your customers spend their disposable income and their time. So I'm going to show you, I think we talked about this in one of the other ones. Blue Ocean Strategy is, you know, sort of what I've been talking about. And it's a great book. They give, I don't know, 30 or 40 different examples in there of different kinds of companies. Cirque du Soleil was one. Yes, it's a circus, but guess what? With no animals, right? And the kind of thing you can do in a different way. Kids still love it. Now, my son and daughter-in-law took my two granddaughters to the one in Las Vegas when they were going through it. And so kids love it too, but grown-ups really love it. Grown-ups, you know, and they just do different things in a just different setting that's kind of unique, and the skills that they show. Sure, it's kind of taking the trapeze artists and the rope or whatever dancers and stuff, and just making the whole thing around that. And so it's a total different kind of perspective from there, and appeals to the people that hate to see elephants or horses or other things being ridden on like they were doing, and making them jump through things and slapping whips at them and all those things. So again, you've got to look at what your competitors are doing, how they're serving a certain segment of the market, and what you're going to do differently that really gives that customer a real sense of value. Whether it's just some unique experience or just a more effective product that saves me time, money, or just does the job better. And those are the kinds of things you have to think about that you're doing. So all of these things, and clearly environmental friendliness has been on our thing for years, but it's amazing on the last couple of years. It's, you know, a few years ago I said, well, it's nice, but a real kind of a niche. Boy, it's getting to be more and more obvious that more of us care about it and want to see something happen.
And the thing with the Blue Ocean strategy is, you know, definitely check into it. Come by my office. I can talk hours about Blue Ocean strategy. I think it's great. They've definitely evolved. I mean, you've probably seen Green Ocean strategy by the Chinese researcher.
Yep.
But the thing with Blue Ocean strategy, the goal is to actually position yourself where you have no customers or limited customers, right? And then sort of how do you do that? And that's sort of this idea of
You mean limited competitors?
Competitors.
Yeah, you said customers.
I
want as many of those
lots
as
of
we
customers,
can.
right?
Sorry.
Well, in terms of customers, really, and they play a role in this too. You know, there's two different ways you can sort of do the Blue Ocean strategy, right? One is this Cirque du Soleil example, is where you kind of, you know, change the product, and really you're delivering almost like a premium product, right?
Right.
And really Cirque du Soleil put Barnum Bailey out of business.
Yeah.
They're no longer in business, traditional circuses,
Yeah,
right?
which is hard to
At least the
believe.
big ones, right?
After
Or
all those
you can
years.
kind of look at it the Southwest perspective, and Mr. Masters is going to get their next slide.
Yeah, let's go right to it.
Where Southwest said, hey, guess what? We want the customers that traditional airlines don't want, right? We want the ones that will drive to the secondary airports. We want those customers, I remember reading some places, we want the customers that pretty much would opt for a bus instead. That's the customers we want.
Car transport. What they wanted was people who are taking fairly long trips in their cars with luggage and going to stay there for a while, and they're saying we're going to find a way to serve them, and we're going to get our model around them. It's not going to be fancy because it's just replacing a car. It's not like they're taking the trip of a lifetime. We're not going to go to a hub here and then take them again. We're going to go direct. They start out at Love Field and all these little side airports, but we're going to go to places, and we're not going to give them great seat reservations. All the seats are going to be the same. We don't think we're going to get first-class customers, right? We're going to replace car transport. So they looked at all these things about meals. You never got a meal. Maybe they're doing it now. I don't know. I haven't flown Southwest in a long time because they're not here. But we're not going to have lounges where they can go to. We're not going to give them first class or even now, you know, a decent-sized economy seat. You know, we're going to have one seat. There's no boarding priorities. Everybody just gets on when they get on, and that's it. We're not going to go to a hub. We're going to go city to city, and they did it in Texas where they saw that people were driving from, you know, Houston to Dallas or whatever it was that they first started out. And we're going to do it fast, and we're going to have a lot of flights, you know, so you can, we're going to have 5 or 10 a day going between these two cities, and we're going to service it. So they really went with a model that said, we're not going to compete against airlines, we're going to compete against relatively long-term car trips.
So this is like a truly minimally viable product, as little as you can.
Well, so a minimally viable product, this is your strategy, and it's not, yes, it's minimally viable because what they did was cut out all these things like meals and lounges and first class seats. They cut that back to a level, but it was a level that their customers really wanted. A minimally viable product is a little bit different in that it means it doesn't have all the features. So I'd want to say, I've got to pick another product. It's just not, it just doesn't have all the, and it's more in kind of the software, maybe some online things, or some things like that, or even, you know, even some products that you could say, I think of one, I have to come up with a better example of this in the future, but it just doesn't have all the features that a customer might want. And these customers, they didn't want these other features. Okay, this was a fine product for them. But sometimes you'll be going out and it won't have all of the features that you might want. Maybe you've got a snow blower that doesn't, I don't know, that you can't turn the direction of blowing. That's a bad one because you always probably want that. But it doesn't have all the features, but it's got enough, so I really see the value of it. You've gotten it out here quicker. It hasn't taken you all this time to get it developed. And then over time, you're going to get feedback from me about what I really like and what else I'd really like to see and would be willing to pay a little extra for, right? And then you, as the product supplier, you're going to add those features over time. But you're not going to try to go into a back room and spend 3 years developing the perfect product. You're going to get one out that has the key features that I need. I'm going to try it. Sure, I know it's not going to have everything I want, but it's going to have the key things that solve my problem. And then over time, you know, I'll give you feedback and I'll expect that you'll improve the product over time.
And I think for you, Taylor, this is something that you will actually have to do.
Yeah.
Right? So when you're designing your transport box, you could spend 10 years doing product testing, 10 years asking potential customers, or you can get those features you know is the low-hanging fruit, you know those first adopters are going to need. You go with that, you take their feedback, and then you start doing your beta version, etc., right? So for you, I totally see that being something in your future as you move forward with that idea.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay? So this is a good way to do it. Some of the others are just, you take your competitors, and if there are a lot of them, and you get a couple of different dimensions of ways to differentiate competitors, okay? And then you just put them in different places, and you're looking for one of those quadrants that's not heavily populated, okay? Because at the highest level, you're thinking about things that you're just going to be different. But when you get to the specifics, that's what's important here. You have to look at your competitors and say, hey, here's things they're doing that cost money to provide that I don't think my customer segment really wants or needs. And they're paying for something they don't want. I can come in with a lower price. I can come in with something that's more efficient, easier to use, or you go the other way. And you say, hey, here are things they're not doing, you know, and if I add those, yeah, it's going to cost me a little, but my customer's really going to value those. And that's where I want to leapfrog ahead and offer those things. So it's both ways. You should look at both opportunities, right? To offer more and to offer less for that very specific customer segment that you're trying to target. Okay, make sense? Yeah, a little? Okay. Okay. So again, this is what we're talking about. You know, there's an ideal set of customers that really look at your value proposition and it's most important to them. Okay, it's got the problem solution fit that's best. Yeah, your product is good and it'd be good for a lot of people, but it's really going to be great for a certain segment of people. And that's what you got to look at. You know, especially those that are already trying to solve the problem. Sometimes you don't even know you have a problem, right? I didn't know I needed a camera on my doorbell or something, but, you know, and it's not, but, you know, sometimes there are other things where they're already trying to solve it. They don't have a really good solution, but they're trying to do it. And that's what you really want to look at, and that there aren't any buying impediments to doing it. So, you know, if you're looking at people, it's, individuals, it's, you know, Professor Valdez said, do they have disposable income? Can they afford it? Do they have the time? Do they have the, you know, the energy and the perspective to really take your product and try to implement it and use it in whatever way they're trying, that they want to do, that you want them to do it in and stuff. That, you know, they're just not, the solutions that are out there today just aren't serving them very well. Those are the customers you want to find. And again, willing and able to pay for it. Okay, that's a key. And then, and it's just, you know, that again, back to this minimal viable product, the features that you do offer, those are the ones that are most important to them. Those are individuals, and you can also, On the business to business side, then, now it's not just an individual making it. You can get out to the right people that you want to, that need it, whether they're software developers or people, we've got this victim services tracking thing where the advocates giving victims, supporting victims of crime and other things. And they want to spend all their time doing that. Instead, they've got to spend half their time filling out these damn reports to justify everything and stuff. So you can sell the solution, but then they've got to go and sell it to somebody else. They've got to get payment for it. And even Stone Age has this problem. It's not a problem. So Stone Age has this thing, especially over the last couple of years, where there's been all this uncertainty about slowdowns and things, and for somebody that needs their product to do an industrial cleaning job in a plant, they really want your product, but they can't get the purchasing department back at headquarters to approve it. What do? Well, okay, so you got two solutions. You rent them the product, because that's at a low enough day-to-day price, and they say, oh yeah, I'm doing this project for this plant, I need the equipment, I'm renting it. They don't have to get approval to buy it, right? Or you set up a rent-to-buy thing where they're really renting it, but in the end they own it, or you set up a financing thing where it's below the level that they have to go and get approval at the corporate level. So you just need to understand the potential impediments that, especially in the business-to-business thing, that come up, and you've got to find a way to give them the tools that helps them sell the solution to their people that have to, check the box and give them and pay the checks and stuff. So.
Can I ask a question with this, Gary? How does this fit, let's say, if someone has like a business plan for like a food truck, or someone has a business plan for like a coffee house, right? I mean, I see how this kind of fits, if we're talking about new technology. I see how this fits in terms of, some product development. But how do you see it kind of fit for, because I know some of the business plans, this is, especially in the high school track, I think I see some
Well, let's use a food truck.
Okay.
I mean, we actually did one in the very first days. Bill Smith, he's not here anymore. He's still got his software development company headquartered. We actually did an ice cream truck for our business model canvas demonstration, because everybody understands an ice cream truck, right? But okay, so who are your customers? Are they little kids? Are they people, taking lunch breaks? Are they, so who are your customers? What are you doing differently? What are you, and there are a lot of food trucks around now. Sure. Some of them really good, some of them not so good. Some of them at fixed location, like 11th Street. Some of them, or at Union, the new bar that Carol started that's got the food truck pulled up to the outside at the window. Or Scafab did the same thing. They didn't want to do it. So how are you unique? How's your food different? How is it something that people want to try once and that's it forever, or is it something that they might come to you for 3 lunches a week if you park in a place where there's a lot of workers? Or do you find a partner like SCA or like Carol Clark or 11th Street where you can go and be there? There've been a lot of places where they've tried further up on North Main there. They tried a food truck yard, if you will, and that didn't work at all. There just weren't enough customers coming up to that end of town. So, you have a good location, good different food. Can you get it to them quickly? Can you process their payment real quickly? Because people don't use that funny green paper anymore. They want to give you this plastic stuff. So can you process that quickly for them? Can you do those kinds of things? So and then who's gonna staff it? And by the way, when I want another truck, who's gonna drive that one for me? And all those things. So yeah, it's different, and you look at what's already out there and who's doing what, and you just better be different than them with lots of things, and and better and different in some ways, better in others, and figure it out. So it's a classic example. It works for any product. This whole approach, it doesn't matter what you got. It works if you apply the principles and stuff. Okay, questions, comments? Okay. Okay, so, and again, what we're talking about here is you know, again, in the old days, we called it the buying process and touch points. Now we're calling it a customer journey, okay? And a lot's going on. I was talking to Tom Barney yesterday, 2 days ago, and trying to get him to come and talk to you about his thing. He was for 15 years the CEO of Osprey Packs, retired from that at a pretty young age, and then has started up his own cycling clothing line with a couple of others. He's actually up in Boulder with his teammate, a couple of his teammates are up there, a couple down here. But he was just, you know, he was just talking about this this process of just trying to understand the buying process that his customers are going through. Okay, and because if you understand what it is, you can understand, you know, where the impediments are, why they're going as slowly, and not as many of them are coming down through. We'll talk about this funnel in a minute. But you really want to understand what is that process, because you've got to figure out, you know, when they get to that touch point, when you can really interact with them and you understand what it is that they're trying to decide to move along on the journey towards purchasing your product, then you can realize what you've got to supply them with that helps them make the right choice obviously being buying your product, right? So that's what you're trying to get them to do. So the more you understand that and the steps that they go through, and the more you'll be able to figure out a way to reach them and help them along that journey. So
Gary, so how do the teams do that? Is it just literally interviewing it? Is
well,
it personal? Is it
first put yourself in those shoes, try to do it. Now obviously you're going to say, well, first time I hear about this, I'm going to want to buy it. Then you're going to say that, but really go through some other product that you've gone through the process with.
Okay.
And stuff, because we all go through it, absolutely. I mean, sometimes we jump, you know, over 3 steps maybe because we really understand what we want, or we don't have any choice. You know, my computer just went down. I've got to find a way to pull out those files that I needed that I can't get to anymore. I'm going to buy whatever software I first come to try it out or whatever. But other times, you know, you make a really rational or partially rational buying decision, and so you go through those steps. So, you know, the way you do, and so yes, you first do it yourself, talk to other people, and then you've got to go out and try to test it on, you know, on some customers. And, you know, and it's not easy to do, and you're just going to learn a lot more as you really get out there with your product or service, and you're trying to offer it. And then that's where, you know, that's where the reality comes in. Okay, and everything we say now, you know, there's 16 different examples of it, but it's always, no matter how good the plan is, you know, we rip up the plan as soon as we have our first contact with the enemy or a customer, or, you know, or the first time a boxer in the ring punches back at us, you know, all our fight plan that we thought we had clearly crafted and stuff, just, you know, it goes out the door. But you learn. It's a whole learning process that you're going through, you know, trying to learn more about your customers. And, you know, yeah, you can try to perceive what it's going to be as best you can, but then, you know, then it really starts happening when you're really out there with a product going to sell it. So, you know, but yeah, understanding that that everybody does go through those processes, those steps. So, you know, it's first they've got to figure out, yeah, I've got a need. Right? I really do want, you know, I just need to solve this problem I have. What are my possible solutions? You know, what's out there? What could solve it? How, you know, how do I get some feedback besides these bogus, you know, ratings that people put up? But how do I really get some feedback that other people have tried this and are really happy and satisfied with the product, and, you know, so I can feel comfortable. You know, I'm not going to have buyer's remorse because I just jumped out and bought the first thing I saw, and it turns out to be a total piece of crap and stuff. I don't want to deal with it. So how are you gonna do that and try to do it? And then, you know, and then how do I finally make that purchase decision? And then how do I do it? And then in the end, you know, do I feel like it really said the product really fulfilled my needs and what I expected out of it? And, you know, how am I going to get feedback to other people that says, hey, I found this solution, you should try it too. Okay, so again, for a while we called it the sales funnel. and it starts, and that's, even Tom was still describing it as a sales funnel. And it's just that you start with this big, massive potential group that you're touching, you're getting them to hear about your product, understand some things, and then they go down through those steps that we talked about, the buying, the customer journey. And, so someone will get to one point and then they either go away because they don't have time to keep looking at it, or it's not as big a deal as they thought, or the specs you have, or the price, or the minimally viable features aren't good enough, or they see something else and then they look at alternatives, maybe go another way, and then they keep coming down, and then finally at the end, a very small proportion of those that started, it funnels down to actual buyers and stuff. So now everybody's trying to rip it up in part because, they've got to rip it up to come up with their own perspective that they can sell books on. But so, I read a good book. It was very well done about and they built it around this woman who owned a technology consulting firm and stuff. And she got some help, and it just said, you can't use a funnel concept anymore. And yesterday, Accenture, one of the big consulting firms, essentially said the same thing. It's too structured, it's too literal. You've got to understand the buying journey a little better, and it changes, and people, they don't come into a funnel and then stay there. They come in and then go out and then come back in and all those things. So, okay, I agree with that, and I agree that, you can't be totally structured, that everybody's going to move in this progression of steps you said, and some of them are going to go away, some are going to go faster than others, and so it's not totally as scripted as we'd like to think when we say a funnel. But on the other hand, there are things that happen along those steps, and you can understand that it's not a well-structured funnel, but at every step of the process, you want to have some metrics to say, how successful am I being? I got Googled 1,000 times, and then people came. How many spent more than 3 seconds looking at my website? How many clicked to get another little more information on the website? Okay, what percentage? Then how many said, oh, I like this, I want some more information, I'm even willing to give you my email, even though I know you're going to probably sell it to somebody else. I'm going to get 64 advertisements tomorrow. But all of those steps you go through, you really need to have some way of measuring how successful you're being at moving people along the journey steps. Okay? And there are ways to do that, lots of ways to do it, and you're going to find those, but you really need to be measuring that, because you've got to, that's what you're trying to do is get them from one end of from the beginning of the journey to the end, which is buying your product, and you just need to know, how well that's working. And you're going to be shocked at how inefficient the funnel is at first, and even when you get really good at it, it's still, the number of people that start out and you think could, should, might be your customers because they look at you. It's just amazing how few, even when you get better at it. You get more of them coming out at that purchase decision end of the journey, but it's still, the response to direct mail and those kinds of things you've seen, it's 1 or 2%. You're spending a lot of money to get 1 or 2%. You can do it a little more effectively, with online kinds of capabilities and stuff, but it's still not as efficient as we would all like to believe it should be because of our great product that we're out there offering and stuff. So, but the more you look at that, the more you see where it's dropped, where you're getting bigger drop off, where people are abandoning the journey that at a higher rate than you think they should. Then you can say, okay, what do I have to do to get them to keep, taking the next legs of that journey to get to the end and stuff. So that's your focus of your marketing plan, right? And how you're and where you're gonna spend the money. And frankly, you certainly don't have enough money to get every customer at every point of that journey, but you figure out the really key points that will get you enough to kind of keep going and fill up the coffers a little bit. So.
Did you guys catch that? That was, what Mr. Masner just said was that pretty much every customer, you can get them, definitely. But how much is it going to cost you to get them, right? How much do you have to lower your product in order for them to buy it? How much do you have to spend in order just to find who they are? How much do you have to spend to turn them? It was very subtle, but really, that's the truth.
Yeah, and it's your customer acquisition cost,
Yep.
that's what we're talking about.
Yep.
And again, it goes back, if you can get those, if you can figure out the characteristics of your early adopters, figure out who they are, why they're buying, where they are, how you can best reach them, then you can reach them most cost effectively, they'll come through faster, that's the sales cycle. We all underestimate how long it's gonna take to move people along. MuniRevs 3 days ago they've been trying to get this one customer, Longmont, the town of Longmont, for 2.5 years. And finally, the guy reached out and said, well, now that you've got this state contract and we're going to be working with it anyway, come on in, we want you to replace our systems here and do it. So, now that's a really long one, and others are a lot faster, but you're just, the whole sales cycle just takes longer than you really, for sure longer than you wish it would, and longer than you're even going to reasonably try to estimate how long it's going to take. But the customer acquisition cost is key. Again, I talked a little bit earlier, there was a company here raised a lot of money. It had this idea, it was called AudioNet, I think it was. Their idea was that you'd go into a crowded, noisy bar. And this was, by the way, before earbuds and other things. There weren't earbuds at the time. You had your phone, okay? And you were going to be able to download the audio from any of the screens in the bar that you wanted to listen to. And apparently, even though you had a lot of friends, and in those days everybody wasn't sitting at a bar looking at their phone and not talking to friends. They actually talked to people, but I don't see that much anymore. But you could download this and put it on, and put the audio on your phone and hear, whether it was the announcer on the football game or somebody else at whatever show, and then they would put on some advertising along with the thing, and they do some things. Not a bad idea. I mean, I was never wild about the idea to start with, but they would have to go in, and the cost of the equipment that they had to put into this bar to set it up, and they had to pay for it because the bar wouldn't. The bar said, they're already in here drinking, why do I care what they're listening to and stuff. And they were going to make the extra money, but the cost of setting one of these up was very high, and it was going to take them like 2 years to recoup that money. And every bar they were going into, how do you scale a business like that unless you've got sort of a bottomless pit of investor money? And they went through what was not a bottomless pit, but it was a fairly large size amount. They went through it immediately.
When I first came to Fort Lewis College, actually, it was in our gym. That software, I don't know
Yes.
where the treadmills are, those TVs
Yeah.
and stuff, those all had that software. And so if you wanted to listen to what was going on those televisions, you'd have to download the app, and then you could literally watch it. We actually used it here at Fort Lewis College. I think it was at the ranch.
Yeah.
I think the ranch had that technology too. And so they were making.
You mean El Rancho, or?
I think, yeah, I thought
because
Rancho had it too.
he was the,
Oh, was it
Skip was the founder.
Oh, Skip was.
Yeah. Or
So,
Chip, I'm sorry,
Chip,
Chip.
yeah. So I mean, they made some traction, but I mean, I didn't know it took 2 years to recoup.
Yeah, no, it's good technology now, it's been duplicated, a lot of people have it out there now.
Sure.
All that, and now with earbuds, it's, you don't have to hold this thing up to your ear,
Right.
your phone up to the speaker up to your ear, or to your, but it was a costly thing, and we're seeing, we've had another one that's going through local news network, kind of a similar media thing, and I like their model, but the way they've got their model now is they're going to install all the equipment on their own, and it's just incredibly expensive.
Are they franchising that? Did that go through?
Still working on it and stuff, and the team's great, and we want them to change. We want them to not compete with local newspapers. We use them as customers.
Sure.
So we'll see if that works. But anyway, so you've got to understand this, and the more you can, again, what you really want. So it's customer acquisition cost on the one hand, and then lifetime value (LTV), right? So how long are you going to keep them once you've acquired them, and that measure of your total return versus how much you're spending to get them, that's a key. Okay, the higher it is, obviously, the better it is. But equally important is how low can I get my customer acquisition cost? Because if I want to scale this business, you know, I've got to be able to do it with as little money as possible, because I don't want to be spending all my time going out and trying to find investors or do this, and so, and again, the judges will look and say, boy, if you can get this, and there's ways to do this. Again, I'll use victim services tracking as an example. They went through SCAPE, and there's a lot of victim service agencies. Some of them are nonprofits, you know, whether it's places, women that are, you know, that are abused and stuff. There's safe houses for them and other things. There are others where in the district attorney's office or in the police departments, sheriff's offices, they'll have people that take care of advocates, try to protect them from, you know, future harm and make sure they get through it. And that's funded. There's an amazing federal program that funds the states, and the states fund these various agencies, nonprofits. They've come up with a product that, again, as I was sort of alluding to before, you have to do this preposterous amount of reporting of how effective you are as an agency that are getting these funds, and it takes half the time of the people, and they had spreadsheets and trying to pull it all together every month in monthly reporting, and they came up with a whole dedicated case management system that allowed them to really quickly put it all together, create the reports that were needed, and get them out. And they came up with a system that, you know, they have, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the pricing, because they had a kind of unique thing. Try our product. It's so easy. You don't need a lot of training. Just try it out. If you like it, we'll turn you into customers. And so they could do that. It doesn't cost anything to get software out on a free trial basis. And these people would sign up after a couple of months, and they would do a real quick 2 or 3 hour onboarding session, make sure they all understood it, and that was it. Really low cost of capture stuff. So, and then once you get these people, they don't want to change, and there's a little bit of inertia anyway, but you know, they've got a 97% retention rate on these customers, so really nice model. If it was a better run company, it'd be booming. They'd have some real management problems, but they've got a great business model. That's what's kind of frustrating about how they perform today. But those are the kinds of things that are really key, and you have to understand them. You have to understand how that customer acquisition cost versus lifetime value. And the lifetime value may just be that you're just going to buy my product once, right? Depending on what your product is, or if you can buy it once and then replace it in 3 years or something. But so I can't, you know, there's not one sort of set that formulas that applies to everybody. But you know, you've got to have whatever the value is you're going to get out of them versus what it costs you to get them. It's got to be a pretty good ratio, and the better it is, the faster you're going to be able to grow, scale your business without relying on outside funding, like Rework was not very good at. So I won't go into that one, but one of the biggest disasters I've ever seen. So just huge amount of upfront costs, and they just weren't recouping it very quickly. It was going to take years to get it back. They just were trying to do too many things because money was too easy for them to get from those funds that were invested. Okay. Questions about this part? Okay. Well, I'm sorry. I've just been talking about this. I should have skipped to this earlier. So again, customer acquisition cost. You can look. It's going to be an estimate, okay? Because you don't know how long it's going to take. You don't know how many hours. If it's one where you've got to have salespeople actually talking to somebody, you don't know how many hours it's going to take them until you get experience with that, okay? And then you try to make it more effective. You try to train your sales force better to answer the objections and to understand what it's going to be and to get out in front of it and do all those things. So you've got to do both sides. You've got to get better, you know, marketing literature or stuff out there or on your websites to your customers so they understand it better to start with, and all those things. You're just, you know, you're going to make some assumptions, and that's all you can do right now. And just make them as best you can. Make them, you know, don't be overly optimistic. I keep saying that over and over again. And then, you know, for those of you who really do create a business out of it, you know, this is a thing you're just going to have to focus on over time and just get better at it. Better at it means, you know, getting individual customer at a lower cost, and that allows you to get more of those customers and build it better. And again, depending on what it is, this onboarding cost can be can be a really huge thing that you just need to think about, especially in the business-to-business side of it, you know, it's a real key, and you can't do it badly, because then, you know, you're not gonna keep those customers, you're not gonna get good references, so you gotta spend the money that's necessary to do it and make it a real key part of how you do it. Customer success is the new term that they use for the onboarding, and then the ongoing, you know, use and support and things that you're giving those customers.
It's tough. I mean, I know there's some ideas here about hardware, there's some software ideas. I mean, 2.5 year sort of sales cycle for MuniRevs. I had a good sort of mentor who worked for Informix back in the day. I don't know if you remember that company. He had over a 2-year sales cycle to sell into Hewlett Packard.
Yeah.
For 2 years, he worked on one deal. I mean, he got $100 million out of that deal, which was the largest Informix ever had. Mark Cosway was the gentleman's name. But it took him 2 years. And think about the support from his organization to let him go 2 years without a sale. He got it. But.
It's, you know, it sounds terrible, 2 years, right? But for $100 million for a relatively smaller company, it was
huge.
Like Informix was.
Yeah, of course.
But, you know, that's huge, right? So, and the other thing you've got to do, and again, how you pay and incentivize your sales force is real key. You're going to have that. We've been through that with you know, they tried this huge sales force that wasn't well trained, and that didn't work. They narrowed down this victim services tracking software company. And I just went through a board meeting with them. They've got a couple of key people, husband and wife combo. So they do it, and they're remote. They can't watch them every day. They're in Florida, and a lot of salespeople are. And that's okay if you've got the proper tracking things and you're making them put the right sorts of things in the CRM, customer, you know, relationship management software, Salesforce and others. So that you're tracking what they're doing, you're tracking how many calls they made, you're tracking how many of them moved along the buying journey, right? And you're seeing that those are successful or not. But with this couple, they're paying them the same 35% commission on sales, independent of what the sales are. So, you know, they're getting all these that are coming in through the kind of free, they see it on the website, oh, I want to try it, I get the free trial, I really love it, I'm signing up. They get credit for those, even though they probably had a minimal, if any, touch point to those customers. On the other hand, you know, she spent a lot of time, Linda did, selling the sheriff's office department in Houston and stuff, and, you know, but she gets enough from this other so that she works when she wants to work, right, and stuff. So I'm trying to get them to say, don't give her commissions for that free stuff, give her a higher commission, 40%, for the big deals that she really can make a difference on and spend the time on and still make a good living on. So, you know, how you incentivize your people, if you have those kinds of products, is a real key that you need to think through and stuff. So. Okay, again, customer acquisition cost, you know, it does include, you can decide where you want to put it in, but support services, you know, they're going to have, you know, questions they want answered, or they're going to have their own problems, or they're going to bring in new people that need to be trained, and you need to think about whether those are covered adequately or not, or included in your customer acquisition. So pricing, again, the black art, you know, that there's no really magic to it, but you're always going to, you know, there's always this overriding thing that your customers are going to find a certain value out of your product, and you're going to find a value, and you just got to share that with them. Okay, you can't take every penny away that they're saving, and they can't expect you to sell it and make no money on it. Okay, so there's a line between the two where you both are happy. You know, they're happy with the price they're paying because they're seeing real value in what the product is you provided them, and you're making a profit on it. And making a profit depends on where you are in the process. Okay, so especially if you're a fixed kind of product that you know, a bicycle thing or an insulin product, or, you know, we'll go through it. Early stages, you know, you can't make it, you don't have the big finely tuned production facility with all the equipment and all this. You're doing a lot by hand, you're doing a lot of these other things. You're buying materials from people that aren't giving you great pricing because you're just this new person on the block that they don't know if you're going to amount to anything at all. and stuff, so you're not gonna get great pricing. You're not gonna order it in big enough volumes so you get really good volume pricing from your suppliers. So your cost of goods sold, which we'll go through at the next section more, but you're just gonna have a higher cost to your product. That as you scale up, as you get more efficient, as you do all those things, you're gonna be able to drive that price down, okay? And that's what you gotta look forward at, 2 years from now, when I've got some traction, I'm selling this much, am I at least at a break even or better point? Have I got enough gross margin, after I take out my cost to cover all my other expenses and stuff at the price I'm charging? So early on in product pricing, you may be selling at a loss, actually. And that's not good. You got to find a way to how am I going to finance that? Where's that money to cover my losses going to come from? But, to get your product out there, to get it in people's hands, to build, to both get that feedback about what works and doesn't work, but more importantly, to get satisfied customers that start spreading, the word of mouth that you got to try one of these. Or it pulls into the parking lot at the trailhead and everybody sees this incredible box that he can pull his thing out, put it together in the box and pull the bike out, put it together, and say, wow, where'd you get that? I need one like that. So that kind of thing. You just may get to this point where, or you may have to start at the point where, you're just selling at a loss at first, but you better have a plan that says I'm going to be able to get my costs down over time so that at this price I can make good enough money to stay in business. So that's one thing if it's a product. The other thing is talk about, what kind of services or, whether it's warranty or parts packages or this whole idea, it's a fundamental change that's going on in the business world, business to business especially, that you're not buying a product anymore, you're buying a solution that includes a lot of services. Okay, and so Stone Age always was selling just the hardware that the contractors would use and all this, but now that they're getting into robotics and helping the end user plants and stuff solve their problems, they're going in with this whole consulting service, and we'll manage the process for you. We'll bring in the trained contractors because we know we trained them. They know how to use this equipment. We'll get in and out fast. We'll do a better job. We'll give you great data that shows how good the job was, and we're going to have sensors on your things that show you, how it's performing and when you need to clean again and stuff. So, the classic example I use is, General Electric doesn't sell jet engines to the airlines. They sell hours of operation. That's how they price their product and stuff. And people, that's just better, right there. The airline knows that they're going. They know how much they get for hour of an operation of an airplane from their passengers, and when you tell them that one of the biggest costs, besides obviously the Boeing airframes and all the rest that's inside it, but if you can tell me that I'm going to pay you as I use your product and as I get the good service out of it, and you bundle support services, you bundle things, whether you bundle training and or parts, or you give them a good warranty, an extended warranty, all those things just add to the perspective. You just need to understand the perspective of your customer, and are they really going to look at this thing and say, wow, I'm buying a solution. I'm not just buying a product that I've got to worry about all these things. I'm buying the solution from these people. If what you've got is a service or a software or an app, there's nothing better than a subscription thing. Don't charge them everything up front. I think I told you this example with the state of Colorado, sorry, won that one too, but the state of Alaska came to MuniRevs, but it wasn't a big state agency like Colorado was that had umpteen dollars, millions of dollars to spend. It was a league of cities because the state of Alaska doesn't have a state sales tax, but a lot of the cities do. So they got this municipal league and they said, we can act just like a state. If we had a product, we can, and for whatever reason, Alaska buyers are the biggest internet, per capita, the biggest internet buyers in the country of any state. And they buy a bigger amount for each thing they get, probably because of shipping costs to get it to Alaska that they have to pay for or something. I don't know, but they are the biggest, the highest percentage of their disposable income and the biggest average order gets sent
More than Hawaii?
to Alaska residents.
I'm surprised, like, I'm surprised, I think Hawaii's really high too, I'd imagine.
Hawaii's high, but they aren't even second or third. I've seen the ratings, I think, yeah, you'd think Hawaii would be, but Hawaii's got a big enough and dense enough population.
On Oahu, for
So there's a
sure.
lot of stores
Sure.
and people already there,
Sure,
right?
800,000.
Alaska, the way they're spread
Yeah.
out across that huge thing, there's only 3 Walmart stores in the state of Alaska. I mean, there's 3 in Durango, I think, or well, no.
It feels like.
Anyway, 3 in southwest Colorado for sure, so.
So for forecasting for like an app and off the price and the value of the customer, how do you go about that? Like presenting that to an individual and saying like, do you just say, if I had this amount of customers and I charge this much, this is what I would make based on the market cap?
We're going to go over that more in the financials. I think.
Yeah, so to answer
Let me
your
make sure I
question,
understand.
We'll
ahead.
definitely go over that next session with
Right,
Alpha
exactly.
Psi.
The very
That's exactly
specifics.
what we're gonna do is, so Mr. Masner's created this amazing 5-year forecasting model that he sort of presents to everyone, you guys have access to, which is just great. And so that'll exactly have that. So you'll put in your prices, or you'll put in sort of what your estimated number of customers are. And so that exactly is what we'll do, but Mr. Masner and Beta Alpha Psi will go over all that with you.
Right. But what you can be spending your time on, in the next week or 2 weeks or whatever, is just beginning to build the sales forecast, okay, of units, right? And we'll talk about that in a minute. You really want to start out that way. You don't want to put a price on it right now yet. You just want to say, I think I can sell this many units of my product over these time periods, based on how many customers I think are there, and where I'm going to be relative to competitors, and my pricing I can afford to do, and the features I've got, and all this stuff. So that's where, I think that's the last slide in here, is our sales forecast. But so I just want to finish that story real quick. So with the state of Alaska, when they didn't have money, we said, okay, they don't have money up front to pay us $3 million like Colorado is to develop this forum, which we already had it developed and paying us that. So you taxpayers in Colorado, I'm sorry I'm telling you that. But with Alaska, what we said is, look, we're going to do it as a percentage of your revenue that we collect, the new tax we collect for you. We'll take X% of it as our payment, and we'll be partners in this thing, obviously we want to have the best system we can, getting most people to pay and all this stuff.